When we started talking about this coach set, I was laughing about the topic that you suggested, running with the ball, because I'm that typical guy. I'm not a coach, but I'm a parent, and I'm a very fanatic parent. And I was always the one shouting along the sidelines, "Hockey is a passing game. Hockey is a passing game. Give the fucking pass." But today we're going to talk about running with the ball. So, Andrew, the floor is yours. Let's talk about the merits of running with the ball.
Thanks. Yeah. So when you suggested the topic to me, I thought it would be a fun point of discussion. I thought it would pique people's interest, because so many people, as you just admitted yourself, we think that hockey should just be a passing game. And I think if we see people on the sidelines, parents, coaches, players themselves, or even on the pitch, being very forceful with players who normally, when they lose the ball because they've run with it, they then shout, "Pass it! It's a passing game. Pass it!" And I've even known players who went with the ball so much and lost it so many times that even before they received the ball, they were being shouted at to lose it, to move it on, to pass it, and it created problems for those players. And I genuinely believe that running with the ball is an important part of hockey, and it's a fundamental part of how we could be playing the game and how we should be developing our game as coaches and as players. I think that if we can develop this part of our game, it will complement nicely the passing game. However, I don't think the passing game should be something that I think it is 90% of what is hockey. I think that the nature of hockey itself is a passing game, but there are certain situations that I'd like to present to everyone today where I think we should even encourage and coach people to run with the ball and to do it in as best to the best their abilities as possible. So before I start, if anyone has any questions, please put them in the chat, and Ernst will relay those over to me, because I'll be sharing my screen, so I won't be able to see the chat at all times. Please feel free, anyone, don't wait until I get past the video. And if you want to make reference to a previous video, just go for it. The more questions, the more interactive this can be, the better it is for all of you guys. And please feel free to question everything I'm saying, because I don't have a magic bullet. I don't have all the answers, and I'd love to hear people's opinions about this.
Yeah, so people, contrary to what we're usually telling, is do not wait with your questions till the end of the chat. Just shoot immediately. If you see a video, hear something Andrew is saying, just ask, and I will interrupt Andrew at that moment to get you his answer.
Brilliant. So let's begin. I'll start sharing my screen. So the first situation that I think is fundamental for our players to learn how to run with the ball is when we're attacking the circle, especially when we're in a congested situation. So we have a free hit, or we have a long corner, or maybe we've started to build up and the team's really sitting deep in their defense. We're going to need to learn how to run with the ball to get into the circle, because if we try and pass it, oftentimes if we pass it flat along the floor, it's going to be intercepted. If we pass it hard and in the air to maybe get that ball into the danger zones, all we can really be looking for the majority of the time are deflections. Maybe we could trap the ball if we have some space, but because the space is so reduced, it's going to be difficult. So another skill that we can learn, attacking the circle with especially 3D skills. So I'm going to put on a couple of clips now of the women's, well, all the clips except for a couple are from the Women's World Cup, and we'll take it slowly when we get, so all of them, and we'll see the ideas I'm talking about. So you can see Altenberg receiving the ball and lifting it to eliminate a 1v1 situation. Elton just on a receive, driving into the circle, into a danger zone. And as a subsequent action, running round, Dutch girl running around the baseline into a space and getting a goal from it. The Japanese player receiving the ball just outside the circle, lifting it to get around the back. We can see definite patterns coming here, lifting it to get into the circle, finding space. So if we take this a bit slower, clip by clip, we can see Altenberg receiving this ball on top of the circle. We can see the, I think it's Barry in the Weber, going really close in to pressure her. She has no passing options on. So we cannot physically ask her to pass the ball in this situation. There are no passing options. She could maybe play a backhand upright push into this danger zone here, but it's quite an uncontrolled pass, in my opinion. Now, if your player is of the quality of Altenberg, this is great. And even if they're not of the quality of Altenberg, I would suggest you encourage players in these close, tight zonal zones here to encourage them to eliminate a 1v1, because players in the circle are going to be marking 90% of the time. They may have a free player here, but then all she has to do is eliminate this free player, or maybe get to this space and get a quick shot away. So we can see that she goes into the space, the ball, everyone stays with their markers, and the free player comes in to press her, and she lifts again, brings a penalty corner because of the lifted skills that she uses to get into the circle. If we go on to the next situation, we can see small drive into the circle by the Dutch player, and Velten, again, knowing that the defender going with a flat stick on the floor, lifts the ball over, drives into the space that the defender's left behind her because everyone else is marking, loses a bit of control with the Dutch. That's the truth. Again, similar to the Argentine-German situation, the player steps out, the free player steps out to press her, and just with one more touch, she beats her again and gets into and creates a very dangerous situation. We can then move on to the next clip, part of this clip, where the Dutch regain possession. Again, everyone, we can see all the Dutch players marked by Irish players. One player steps out, gets her angles wrong. The Dutch player drives into the space left behind her, and then makes a good connection for a goal. You can see similarly here, similar situation. All Australian players are marking the Japanese player. So all this player here has to do is beat this one player on a 1v1, and she can create an overload into the circle. To do that, the best way is to try and lift the ball and drive into space, the space left behind the Australian defender. Now, previously in the last two clips, we saw both the Argentine defenders and the Irish defenders with a flat stick on the floor, which as a defender is, in my opinion, a mistake. And I think the Australian player defends really well with her stick quite vertically, and she's waiting for the Japanese player to start lifting the ball. So she's prepared to defend there. She's quite clever with her defense to just use her body. But then in the next clip is actually a continuation of the previous one. We can see a quick free hit taken by the Japanese player. And the Australian defender here goes, she has a stick slightly in the air, but it's still not great defending. And the Japanese player just lifts the ball over her stick, drives into this space left behind. Everyone else is marking. And she continues to lift, and at the end just loses control of the ball.
Okay. So, question from Bert. With running with the ball, a lot of focus is how to eliminate. But good running starts with good and quick footwork, pivoting, and turning, and that gives you the early second to use the space. What's your opinion on that, Andrew?
I agree, and actually we'll see situations where running with the ball is not necessarily eliminating in a front-on situation, as we've seen with this in attack in a circle. It could be a counter-attack where you receive and you just run straight into an open space, or maybe taking receiving between lines and just turning between the zones that maybe had left in defence, just running into space. So we'll see that, and it's a good point, Bert, that it's not always a front-on situation. And I think that's something that coaches also need to take into account when they're training, is that running with the ball is not elimination. And I think a lot of players, these players that we spoke about before, who make their mistakes of running with the ball and then losing it, and then they get shouted at, is because they're running straight at players. Because how have they been coached when they're younger? With the 1v1s where you run at a player and you try and eliminate. How many of us as coaches teach players how to run to space rather than running at players? And how many of us teach us to run after receiving the ball with our back to goal? So there's lots of different variations, which I think are key, and we'll see some of those situations now.
Yeah. Sometimes the straight way to a goal is not always the shortest way to the goal, huh? The best way to the goal.
Correct. Very correct. If you want to, I could share my screen again, and I'll do it in slow motion, because Jim said it was better with slow motion.
Yeah.
So I'll do that.
Let's try that.
So let's go for situation number 2, which would be, let's go with breaking between lines, as was brought up by Bert right now. We can look at that. So we'll look at 2 clips from, I think, Germany and from Holland. So